Good evening. My name is Amy Bach, and I am so glad you were able to find the time to tune into this Roadmap to Recovery program, although I'm so sorry for the circumstances that made it important for you to absorb the information that we are bringing you this evening. And before we get started, I want to thank Laura Collins, without whose help and input, we would not have launched this series. And so Laura is in the background tonight and has helped us to curate what we're bringing to you this evening. You probably already know how to find our website, but if you want to follow along the slide deck tonight, you can go to the events page there. There's the link for you. And on the right side, you'll see the link to the deck for tonight. Just briefly about our organization, we're a 501c3 consumer-focused nonprofit with a 30-year track record assisting in disaster recovery. We are a trusted information resource and a respected voice for insurance consumers in all 50 states. This is, I think, is our 6th wildfire in Colorado that we have brought our program to and we're not for profit, not for sale. We don't sell our services. We're funded by donations and grants, and it is important to us that our brand be trustworthy, and we have a platinum rating on GuideStar, which rates charities for trustworthiness. Our team it consists of our professional staff, our government, business, and nonprofit partners, our volunteers, and our volunteers include people who have been through catastrophic losses like what you're going through now, that learned lessons the hard way and now share those with others to help them on the road they traveled. And then consumer-oriented professionals. And we have one of those with us tonight. We have 3 programs, and tonight is brought to you through our Roadmap to Recovery program. This is the link to the library where we are on an ongoing basis adding bulletins when they come out from the Department of Insurance, or we are updating our materials. We recently updated our smoke restoration guide as we continue to monitor the scientific and health communities to identify new resources to help you make good decisions on restoring your damaged property to its pre-loss condition. So coming up as part of this series that we are focusing on standing home partial loss issues is next Tuesday. We will have one of our survivor to survivor forums where you can come on through Zoom, and it's an informal setting. We don't bring in outside experts to these. We bring in homegrown experts, people who been there, done that, and are there to kind of share strategies. And it's also a community for people who are going through what you're going through now. And we are dedicating this next Tuesdays to you, to your community, and the unique challenges that you have as standing homeowners. On the 25th, we will have a Q&A. Where we will have a panel of experts. We'll have a lawyer, we will have somebody from the Department of Insurance, we will have a public adjuster, all of whom are familiar with the issues that you are navigating, and will be able to answer more questions. Now, we will take questions tonight through the Q&A if you have them, or you can save them and submit them in advance for the 25th. It's up to you. So, and then coming up on the 29th, which is maybe not of interest to those of you who have partial losses, but regardless, for some of your neighbors or folks that are looking at rebuilding, we'll be talking about some of the new technologies that people are using to build resilient homes. You probably all know that the Community Foundation of Boulder County is doing a lot to support your recovery, and including giving us a grant early on, which allowed us to bring our series to you. Reminder that we're just here to give you general guidance, not legal advice. And if you do have a specific legal question, we recommend you consult with an experienced attorney. We don't endorse or warrant the speakers or sponsors at our workshops. And we're not creating a professional relationship with you. We're here as educators. So I'm Amy Bach. I'm one of the founders of the organization. I'm going to be moderating tonight. And I'm so pleased to be joined by two experts, Sandra Watts, who has been an insurance specialist with us. I have a little more detail about her in a minute. And then Rob Adkins with Regal Restoration Company out of Aurora. A little bit about Sandy. She has been learning and studying a lot about fire and smoke and the impacts that they have on structures and people. But she has 30 years of experience as an insurance adjuster and serves as an expert in cases that get litigated. Sandy, thanks so much for being with us. We also have Rob Adkins. We have it wrong. It's Akins, right?
Yes, Akins.
Okay, I apologize. There's an extra D in there.
That's okay.
Okay. And Rob, what does it mean on your website to say you're IICRC certified?
IICRC, it's a nonprofit organization that's recognized worldwide that offers training classes for water, fire, mold cleanup. You go through those classes, you get certified, you get trained to do it to today's standards and to do things correctly. So we're a certified firm. My technicians are certified in water, fire, and mold. And that's really what that means.
Great. Okay, so tonight we're going to be covering these 6 topics. Understanding what happened to your home, what constitutes a thorough inspection, when is pre-cleaning testing imperative? I think it's generally always a good idea. When is it imperative? Comparing, reconciling the estimates that you get from somebody that your insurance adjuster brings in versus an independent company that you seek out. And then the big one, cleaning and restoring your home to its pre-fire condition. What are the methods and what are some of the challenges there? We'll talk a little bit about post-cleaning testing, and then we'll talk about resolving disputes with insurance adjusters and companies over remediation, including pre and post testing, the selection of the vendor, the selection of the company that does the testing and or the work, scope of and methods of cleaning, and costs and who pays for those. So let's get started with understanding what happened to your home as a result of the Marshall Fire. So I'll give you a quick reality check, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Sandy. So none of these are things you don't know. Wildfire smoke and extreme heat cause visible and invisible damage to property and people. There are significant costs associated with testing and proper remediation, and insurers are oriented to control costs. That's how they do business. Health and safety standards around wildfire smoke are still being formulated. If you or a family member are vulnerable to smoke, then and or mold, then you want to document that condition with a doctor's confirmation. If your insurer is denying ALE or remediation, you want to be insisting in writing that they explain their determination. And then, of course, you want to challenge that and be persistent, organized, and use all avenues of help. So, so Sandy, I think you have some additional maybe thoughts there about any more reality checks you want to add?
I think we'll get into it a little bit. I have a lot to say about insurers denying ALE or remediation. But I think we can address that as we move along.
Okay.
Which is fine.
Great. So hopefully some or all of you tuned in when we did the first installment in this series. We had we had 2 industrial hygienists. Actually, we had 3, one with the County of Boulder, one who's working locally, one who's based in Arizona. And you're encouraged to kind of go back and we have the recording of that session, and you're encouraged to look at it. We're going to do a really very cursory review about some of the technical issues that we covered here. So take it away, Sandy.
Great, great. So I don't know, some of you might have attended the previous webinar that went on, I don't know, a week or 2 ago with the industrial hygienist. But we just thought we'd go through, as some of you might not have done this. And I think the important takeaway of this slide is that soot, char, and ash are the focus of a lot of concerns, especially with insurance companies and people. Those are the things you can see. This slide talks about things you can't see. There are a lot of visible vapors and smoke. A lot of them are toxic. They aerosolize and form droplets that settle on horizontal surface. So that's sort of how it makes up. We have more. Keep going. This is just a slide that shows the size of a smoke particle. The blue circle represents the cross section of an average human hair. The yellow cross section represents the smallest particle that's visible by a human eye, and the red dot represents the average size of most combustion smoke particulates. So that kind of gives you an idea of the size of things we're dealing with and why it's important to know that you can't see everything that's going on in the house. Okay. Smoke, as you guys know, I'll go through this fast, but it's incomplete combustion, so the smoke, as things are burning, it comes up, it's filled with everything. And these are different particles, and they are different things. So char are the bigger pieces. Sometimes it's flaky, bigger than a micron, and they sort of like, if you can sometimes see a little piece of paper that's burned. So they retain the characteristics a lot of time of the burned materials, molecularly as well as visually. Ash is a residue left after complete combustion of particles, and then soot is the carbon particles that are left behind after combustion. The soot can be really acidic and damaging. A really important thing to know, because soot is what everybody looks for after a fire. Wildfires don't contain a lot of soot in comparison to regular house fires. So it's one of the reasons why sometimes you don't see as much as you might expect to see. Okay, what's the difference? You need to just know that there is a difference, that when they test for things, sometimes certain types of particles are considered, not as dangerous as other particles. So you just need to sort of be educated on what's in it, know that a lot of things aren't visible to the naked eye, and that the composition of the smoke in your house is going to be different than the composition of smoke in someone else's house down the street. And it's really highly dependent on what kind of materials are burned. I just talked to somebody whose neighbor had a pesticide company, and so his garage was full of his products. And when something like that burns, it's a totally different ball game. But also building materials, building materials now are far more they're less natural than they used to be back in the day. So those things, obviously, when they burn plastics and so forth, create a different type of residue. Okay, so these are things I'm sure you guys, I see some questions already. Smoke, smoke residues remain after the smoke dissipates, the particles settle on the surface, and the things that people are mainly concerned about are the byproducts of combustion, the small things, and the PAHs, they're all different. I heard a hygienist refer to it as a chemical soup, which I think is probably a pretty good thing. Volatile organic compounds, people worry a lot about them. They do, because they're volatile. That means their half-life is really pretty fast, so they dissipate faster than other things like the benzenes and the aldehydes. which degrade a lot more slowly. Okay. And again, it depends on what was burned. So this is important just so that you're informed, so that you will have the knowledge to move forward with the proper restoration of your home, so that you can have informed conversations with professionals, insurance professionals and restoration professionals. Know that you can't see all the damage. And there is a trend. I haven't really heard much out of Boulder, but I haven't been as dialed in on this loss. But there are some insurers trying to use visibility as a threshold for measuring damage. There have been some endorsements on insurance policies that aren't flying in California. And I'm not aware if they are in Colorado, but be on the lookout of that for that, because
So yeah, let me ask Rob. Rob, have
Yeah.
you seen any situations where a homeowner has said, well, my insurer is saying that that there's no, you can't really see any damage, and therefore there's no reason to clean?
No, the jobs that we've seen, I mean, it's been pretty evident that there was smoke and stuff coming inside through the windows, through the doors. I can't think of anyone really where the insurance company said, oh no, it's clean, there's no problem. Everybody that we've talked to has said, yeah.
And how about where have you had any situation where a homeowner has said that their insurer is saying that there's some sort of exclusion or cap or limit on what they'll pay for smoke damage?
We haven't run into any caps that we're aware of. Everything, all the projects that we're working on, once it's getting through to the insurance company, seem to be getting approved. The adjusters are really in the beginning, and it just depends on the adjuster. Some were, oh, it just needs a light cleaning, it's not as bad. But once I give them my scope of work, have a conversation with the adjuster, it usually gets to the point where it needs to get to.
Yeah, and this is maybe a tiny bit out of order, but it's relevant to one of the questions we've already gotten. And since we got this mention here on the slide, varying degrees of sensitivity of occupants, I guess I would like to ask either of you. Somebody asks, what can be used as medical documentation of a vulnerability? Will a document with a diagnosis suffice? I mean, as a lawyer, I say yes. Any thoughts from either of you?
I do. Yeah, I think it will. A lot of times you'll have the adjuster, if you bring your sensitivities to their attention, then they'll ask you to have a doctor write a note. Remember that a lot of health information is confidential, and you don't have to share everything with them. But I think having your doctor say that you can't be in a building with residual smoke is a good idea. The best way to deal with it.
Okay. All right. So let's get to what kind of visual observation. So we're still in the process here of talking about before you figure out what has to be done to remediate, what kind of information do you want there to have been gathered about what happened to your home?
Excellent. Yeah. And visual observations, there's where everybody starts. And I think it's important to note that this should happen with every step along the way, and everyone, starting with you, the homeowners, documenting what you see, because you know your home the best. And that allows you to point things out to the adjusters. It allows you to point things out to the restoration professionals, who will probably point out things that you didn't see. But get it there and get it on the record. So some of the things I like to see, and keep this in mind if you're reading hygienist reports. I think, I know you guys talked about it a lot, but these are things that I like to see in hygienist reports to show that they considered the factors involved when they were looking at the loss. How far away were you from the fire? This picture is a loss in Santa Cruz that I did. And it burned all around her, all the houses. You can see one sort of there. You'll see another one on the other side, all around her. So you have to really see like how much smoke, was charged into this house. What direction did it come from? What were the winds? How close were the neighboring properties? What was in there? What were the sources of chemical? Look at the outside of your house, look for charring and heat damage to your roof, your siding, your windows, and so forth. And I like to start at the outside, because that will inform you on the inside. Yeah, this is just another picture of that same house, and you can just see this loss here ended up being about a $350,000 loss to remediate. So that's kind of gives you an idea.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The loss of the standing house ended up being $350,000 to remediate.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
And that's a really important point, because it looks, I mean, the roof, is intact.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. Took a long time, took 2 years to get it. So when you go and look at the outside, document, identify the areas of the most damage, look and see if you have thermal damage. We've got some slides that are going to show you this. Windows are one of those things where sometimes, and Rob, you can jump in anytime you want, but windows are sometimes hard to see the damage, and sometimes it's an issue of the heat causing the seals to heat up and lose their ability to hold that. There's a gas in between the two panes, and then they fail like a year later, and nobody, was thinking about it at the time. So it's really important to look very closely at those, and I'll show you some pictures. But your siding, your roof, door and window openings, tops of your doors, and your vegetation.
Okay.
These are just some quick pictures. This is that same house in Santa Cruz. If you look at the one on the left, that's bubbling and heat damage to to that rafter. And then the center one is a composite clad window, and you can see it's really hard to see, but if you look really closely, it's all bubbled up, and that was a really smooth surface before it started. And then the one on the far right is, you can see where there's been melting of the adhesives there and coming down. And these windows all ended up failing and being replaced.
Okay. We might as well take this question. It's kind of relevant to what we're talking about. My apartment, a third of a mile from a burn area, was subjected to smoke damage. My insurance company is distinguishing between smoke damage and contaminant damage, and essentially stating they don't cover the contaminant damage. In other words, the toxic contaminants in the smoke. This distinction essentially ignores the science behind VOC and particulates on porous surfaces. Is this standard practice across insurance companies?
This is one thing, and I do a lot of expert witness work, and it's sort of a new thing that companies are trying, and it's really dangerous. It's really important to characterize your loss. Your loss is a fire loss. Most states, and I believe Colorado is a approximate cause state, which means that if the loss, which caused everything to be set in motion, which caused your damage, is a covered loss, fire, then everything that flows from that is covered up to your policy limits, with very, very few exceptions. So we've seen that before, and we've seen that where they're saying that it's contamination. It's not contamination. It is a byproduct of fire, and it's really important to know that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm immediately thinking they're maybe trying to characterize it as a pollutant and saying that it's the pollution exclusion excludes it, but that
I've seen it.
Yeah, that I mean, the point you made is the most important, which is like if it emanated from the fire, if it was proximately caused by the fire, then it should be covered. Rob, are you getting any hearing pushback about distinguishing between fire damage and a contaminant?
No, we haven't heard any of that. And I saw the insurance company that was mentioned there, and we're working on 2 projects right now with that same insurance company, and That hasn't been brought up at all. So
Okay.
I am kind of confused as to why it's doing it, but I guess different adjusters just really try and push different agendas,
Right.
and that's not the right thing to do.
Right. And we hear that a lot where one adjuster says one thing and another adjuster says something else. And which is one of the reasons why we always emphasize how important it is to keep good documentation of who said what to who in connection with your claim, and keep a journal. It's sort of one of our core reminders that we always give. Okay. More on documenting.
More on documenting. Move to the inside. These are also questions that I like to see on a good comprehensive industrial hygiene report, talking about, were the windows open or closed? I think, you know, it was winter, so most of yours were closed. But the second one, HVAC. So it's winter. Most people's heating systems were on. So if your HVAC was on when your house was charged with fire, that essentially means that your cold air return was sucking in all the smoke that was inside your house, running it through the HVAC and pumping it out the vents all over your house. So it's a really important item, and it's something that I see overlooked all the time. Or they say, oh, it's just fine, you can clean it. And we can talk about that a little bit later on, what you can clean and what you can't. Also attics. Attics have vents. The way that fire and smoke work, there's a pressure differential between the outside and the inside based on the heating of the air and the smoke that causes the attics just to suck in all the smoke. So if you have vents, especially if the vents are facing the direction that the fire, you know, originated from, or the prevailing winds, then your attic is most likely going to be filled with smoke. So you just want to identify all these areas. In your house, you look at horizontal surfaces. The particles tend to settle on the horizontal surfaces. A lot of times window tracks, tops of doors, light fixtures. A lot of times, even if there's, in cases that I've seen where post remediation testing has failed, you go in and you go to those areas, and you know, if they weren't cleaned, that's that. They tend to do that. Insulation's like a sponge for the air. It captures everything, as does carpet pad. So
Okay.
important to note those.
All right.
These are just some pictures I snapped. These are all the same house in Santa Cruz. This is just, you know, sort of, this is the top of a window. These are the connectors for her security system. So you can see the particles there. Keep going. I like to always take apart the thermostat, because these style of thermostats, electrical components, and Rob can talk about this, they, the smoke is attracted to them. There's a chemical attraction that goes on, and it causes the degradation of the electronic components. But I find that I can almost always find smoke inside these electronic thermostats, and it's a good way to show how infiltrating the smoke was.
Yeah. So, Rob, and then you're welcome to comment on now, or when we get to the section when we dig into like, what is it that you do when you go in to clean?
Right.
Up to you.
No, it's just like Sandy said. It's like a magnet. It pulls everything in, motors, and even in asbestos abatement, that kind of stuff. It gets sucked into the motors, and they're more cost effective, obviously, to just replace and get rid of. And you wouldn't want to try and clean this because you're going to have problems down the road anyway. So. Yeah,
and you know, we got a question that's very kind of it's got general application to a lot of the things that we're talking about. When is it you want replacement over cleaning? So just, you know, as we go through the program, if you can just sort of keep that question in mind, and anytime you think, you know, it's relevant, then, you know, like offer a comment. So for example, here you just said, you know, this is a situation where some things it's not worth cleaning them, it's just replace them, right? So you know, to the extent you can kind of enumerate what examples of that'll be helpful.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just another example of showing a soot and char around a window. and to remind you to take pictures. So this is just sort of a little slide that sort of sums it all up, talks about the areas of damage. I'll tell you, I just heard, I talked to a lawyer yesterday on a case from the glass fire in Napa, and something I've never seen, but it's pretty, it's plausible. They used the house as the last stand. They drug the hoses through the house to defend the neighbors and so forth, and they saved the house. But it had a stucco exterior, and they couldn't figure out why it was just this, the odor was just everywhere. And they tore off part of the stucco and found that the building paper underneath was completely burned. It's a first for me. So it's very interesting. It just talks about, you've got to kind of think about how much heat your particular house was exposed to. So it's very, very interesting. Okay, yeah, so this is a slide about sort of indirect damage. Like I said, that house that I talked about yesterday, they brought, there's a lot of damage caused by the fire suppression going through the house, but it's for the greater good. So same thing with weight of fire engines on driveways. Look at your driveways. High pressure hoses cause a lot. They can cause damage to your stucco, damage to your concrete. It's very common that either the water from the fire suppression efforts, as well as the water from the cleaning and pressure washing, can cause damage like peeling paint, staining, things like that. It's important to point out that it's very rare. A lot of times we see them trying to blame the restoration company and saying, well, the restoration company wasn't careful enough when they pressure washed your house, so you can talk to them about the fact that your paint came off. That's just not the way it is. They insure your houses as they are. So if your house, had, some bubbling of the paint or whatever that caused the paint to chip off when it was power washed, that's part of the fire damage, and that's owed to you, and it's not the restoration company's fault in most cases. I mean, you can see when it's their fault, they'll like dig into wood, with their pressure. You can see gouges that are different than peeling paint and things like that. Mm-hmm. So these are all just things to document. These are all covered as part of fire damage, important, and should be included.
Okay. All right. Who's qualified to inspect for heat and fire suppression damage? Obviously, we've talked about you, the homeowner, taking pictures and videos. Qualified, experienced GC. These are some of the professional categories that can give credible opinions about damage. We talked on the first program about how some manufacturers will void warranty windows and I don't know, siding. Does that happen, Sandy? It
does. It does a lot. And if you get pushback from your insurance company on things like siding, windows, roofing materials, we found that the manufacturers or the distributors are pretty helpful. If you contact them and say, hey, look, I had a fire, my house was exposed to this degree. What do you say? What do you think is, damage? And a lot of times I see them, they'll write a letter. Some of them will come out and look if you have a whole house full of windows. So it's worth following up.
We had a customer with a hot tub, very new hot tub, still under warranty. She contacted them. I believe they came out, inspected it, and basically wrote her a letter, like you said, saying, we can't warranty it unless the electronic components are replaced. Sent that off to the adjuster, and everything was good.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get adjusters saying that they don't insure, warranties. They don't warranty work, and they don't do that. But if you just bought a hot tub and it's new, it's in good condition, it doesn't have any damage, and it has a warranty that goes for 5 years, you don't have that anymore if it's voided. So they need to provide that to return you to the pre-loss condition.
Okay. So thorough inspections and pre-cleaning testing. Now, we are very well aware at United Policyholders that a lot of people have wanted to follow the recommended protocol of having there be pre-cleaning testing to determine what exactly happened here and what needs to be done in terms of making a remediation plan. But insurance companies don't always want to pay for that. And we know that for a lot of people, it's a financial hardship to figure out, well, how am I going to find the dough to pay, and should I pay? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, I'd like to have our experts talk a little bit about, who's qualified to make these determinations. So Sandy, if you want to go through this slide.
Sure. So when your insurance adjuster comes out, they're fine if they say, you show them the damage and they're like, yes, your house is clearly charged with smoke, and, they're going to pay for professional remediation. So that's fine. Obviously, the best case scenario is if they will pay for pre-remediation and post-remediation testing. I found that's very hard. Most of them, if you ask, they'll say you're going to get one shot. What they can't do, and I'd say if you only get one shot, save it for the end. Make sure that your remediation company knows that you'll be doing a pre-remediation clearance. And not broad, but it makes a lot of them pay more attention. So one thing they can't do, though, is they cannot come in and declare that your house has no smoke damage. Okay, we've already shown you that not all smoke damage is visible. These adjusters are not certified. They're not, they're not IICRC certified. They're not industrial hygienists. They're not, indoor air quality professionals. So they can't just come in and declare that your house is fine. And I've seen them. I've got cases where they just walked in, they said everything's great. Send a letter saying you have no accidental direct physical loss to your home. See you soon. So they can't do it. And what I suggest people do when they're faced with that, I don't know if any of you are, but I just say, great, I'm so happy to hear it. Send me a letter that outlines your adjuster's qualifications to make this determination, and that my house is safe for me and my family to reoccupy. That will get them to change their mind. Ask about qualifications always. Okay. So these are the times,
let me pin one sec. So Rob, I'm guessing that a lot of the time you're asked to do an estimate and scope out a remediation when there has not been an industrial hygienist, there's no testing has been done, right? Would you say that's the majority of the time, or how, can you comment on that? You're on mute. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Yeah, the majority of the time we are not, we don't have pre-testing done. We have had some customers that have paid for it out of pocket. We have had some insurance companies that said, yeah, we'll have the pre-testing done. But again, for the majority of it, it's just the insurance company says, yes, we're going to allow your home to be cleaned. We recognize that. And then we come in and we write an estimate. And, we're not independent. We're not hygienists either. We're not chemists. We're just, we clean, we take care of that. So we go in and we treat it as if it's the worst thing that has ever had smoke. And we handle it that way, and then get the post clearance done at the end.
Yeah. And, this has been a really big issue for a lot of people. They feel like they, the best practice would be to have it be pre-tested and also post, but obviously that is not happening a lot of the time. And I have to say, like, for a while, it was hard. It's been somewhat hard for me to get my mind around, well, okay, isn't the most important thing post cleaning testing? And I guess, you've talked about how, and we will get to this later in the program, when there's post cleaning testing and it fails, it seems like it just really a matter of efficiency in some ways. It's like, it just would be, it's the ideal to know what the conditions are through proper testing before you clean it. And that way, you can just clean it once instead of having to go back 3 times. But is it generally like that you're seeing insurers will pay for the post cleaning testing and sometimes it fails? Maybe not for you.
Right. No, yeah, there's been several that I've heard about. We haven't failed any post-test cleanings, but I have heard we're working on 2 projects now where larger companies have come in, they've done the cleaning. One house, I think, was cleaned 3 times by the same company and failed to post cleaning every single time.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the post testing is definitely important. And if that's the only testing that the insurance company is going to pay for, definitely get that done. But it really does come back down to process and how it's done correctly. And that makes the world of difference when it comes to that post testing. I mean,
Right.
if it's done right, you should never fail. I mean, of course you have occasions, but if it's done correctly, there shouldn't be any issues with the post test.
Yeah, yeah, and we are going to talk about the difference between these big national cleaning outfits that have relationships with insurance companies, and which kind of distinguishes them from an independent company that's going to call balls and strikes and not necessarily be focused on, you know, getting repeat business from the insurance company, but they're focused on getting good reviews from the customer whose house they cleaned, which is, you know, which is, I'm sure, more your business model. So
Right.
Sandy, what are we looking at here?
So this is a slide I got from Dawn Bolstad Johnson of Kaizen. We did the thing last week, and this was just so intriguing to me because on the left is a melted downspout, a PVC downspout that is it's integrated into the stucco of the house coming down, and then just the tail of it is out for the drainage. It melted. The stucco was not compromised. The house looked pretty good. They did testing. This is the opposite side. So this purple room is the opposite side. That corner is where that downspout is located. So they did Citar and ash testing in this room, and it came back, not too concerning. But when Dawn did her particulate testing, this room was filled. And then you see those 2 little holes drilled there with her equipment going in. What basically happened is that the melting of this PVC downspout, the byproduct of that melting is just filled into the wall cavities. So it looks benign, and it's not.
Yeah. Okay. And what are we looking at here?
This is just to show you, this is the same room. This is their Citar and ash rating, and it's nothing to be overly concerned about. You've got some low numbers, none detected. It's kind of got corrupted a little bit. There was some places, but not an overly concerning particulate tape lift response. And then the next one, I think, let's go to the next slide, is the part, oh no, I guess we don't have it in there, but she has a handheld particulate counter that doesn't really talk about what the items are, but you could just see that the room was just filled with smoke in the air. So, yeah. So this is the airborne particulate screen. This is the device that they use to count the particles. One of the things that this is good for, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring this to you guys' attention, is if you're concerned about, like say you've tested for Citar and ash, it looks reasonably good. You're concerned about the things that you can't see. This is a good way to sort of do a pre-screen and see if it would be worth your while to do really extensive testing of what's in the air, because this particulate meter, it's pretty inexpensive relatively to everything. And it doesn't tell you what's in the air, but it tells you the particle size, and this is kind of messed up, but you can see, they can extrapolate from the particle size, the types of contaminants that are within that range, so these IHs know, they say, oh, well, 0.3 microns is this, and this, and this, and 0.1 is this. So it'll tell you the overall particle load that's in the air, that's remaining in the air, and it can inform you whether or not further testing might be helpful to you. Okay.
Yeah. So we had a question saying we had an insurance company that did testing that saying no damage. but the local industrial hygienist reviewed the report and said it was not the correct type of testing. So that kind of, can we talk for a minute, both of you, about what, when you get different professionals that seem to have credentials and they don't agree, that seems so common in this context. What do you recommend to people to do?
We would recommend maybe a third testing, somebody outside independent as well. Somebody that's not connected even to the homeowner or to the insurance company, and have them come out, do another testing, and then evaluate those results. And they should fall on one side or the other, you would think.
So like 2 out of 3.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that, that people have different tolerance levels. Some people are, people are more, and it's just the way it is, more or less concerned. We saw a lot of people in the Santa Cruz Mountain Fire in 2020 that they're like, I don't care, I burn my wood stove all the time. I don't, as long as I get the big chunks, we're good. And then some people are very sensitive and concerned, and they want to know, down to the smallest molecular level. So when I see something like that says it's the wrong kind of testing, there's a lot of drill down that needs to go on there. It's like, what was their objective? What were they looking for? What's he looking for? And it's important to know that really good testers can go into a house and test in places where they will never find damage, and that really good testers can go in and always find damage. So it's tough.
like the old you don't find what you don't
looking for,
right?
Yeah.
So this is why we have this slide, is just commonly overlooked areas. Okay, so testing, and now we're getting to we've talked about this is just a reminder that if you want to go back and watch that program where we had the 3 indoor air quality experts, you can get a refresher there. So comparing, reconciling remediation plans and estimates from an insurer retained company versus an independent company. And we try at United Policyholders not to speak in extremes. Like, it's never okay, to have the guy or gal that your insurance adjuster brings with you do the remediation, or it's always okay to do that, or you should never, never or always, right? Because the path, there's lots of different paths for people. But generally speaking, we do get a lot of complaints from people who say, well, I used the company that my adjuster brought, and they seem to be kind of make light of things, and they seem to be kind of like erring on the side of not doing really, really thorough work. So can we talk a little bit, Rob, about how do you figure out whether what kind of expert you want to hire to clean your house? Like, what are some of the guideposts that you give people when they're looking for a remediation expert?
Well, they just need to hire us. But we were on a preferred vendors list with an insurance company for a long time. And it's not, we never saw that, the adjusters didn't run the show. They didn't really tell us what to do, but they would kind of give us some suggestions, hey, is that really necessary? Can you do this? Can you do that? And we would get into arguments with them all the time over that. And it's, part of the process, part of the standards with the IICRC. And we went back and forth, and we finally got tired of that. So that's why we stepped away from that vendor program. The bigger companies, that's where they get a lot of their money. So they kind of work with the adjusters. And if the adjuster says, oh, hey, let's not pay for that, I'm not saying that they don't do it, but they will kind of slough that off sometimes. So you just really want to pay attention to the company coming in, make sure they're certified with the IICRC, ask them the questions, how are you going to clean? If they're there with an adjuster, and, ask questions, is everything done per the IICRC standards? And it never hurts to call another company and ask their opinion. I tell all my customers, even if they don't hire us, my phone is always on. If they have questions about what another company is doing, I'll be happy to give them my opinion and
Yeah.
say, yes, that's within the standards of the IICRC, or, that's not really, and then get them to ask the questions of the contractor, why are you doing this? And ask for documentation. I've got the books on my tablet anywhere I can show them in the PDFs from the IICRC why we're doing what we're doing most of
Yep.
the time.
Yeah. Well, standards, professional standards are the consumer's best friend, right? And in terms of like, well, did you comply with these? They're there for a reason, right? So even though, we said earlier, that the standard for indoor air quality related to post wildfires still being firmed up, and experts are saying it's like another 8 months or something. That doesn't mean there aren't standards for indoor air quality generally. It's just wildfire smoke particularly, right? Is that right, Sandy? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be, so this is just sort of general categories. We're really just talking tonight about cleaning, remediation. We're not talking about repair work, physical repair work. So we're not going to get into structural engineers and that sort of thing. So Rob, a comprehensive estimate is going to have identify all the affected areas, right? It's going to clearly identify. Let's look at. I'm gonna just like come back to this in a minute. I'm going to cover this, and then we're going to go through your sample of what one of your reports looks like. Just a reminder to all of you who have dialed in tonight. Your insurance company cannot require you to have your property repaired or worked on by a specific individual or entity. So that's just a reminder. That's in a bulletin that the Colorado Division of Insurance has put out. So here is one of your excerpt from one of your estimates. So if you can just kind of walk us through, Rob, how you put your estimates together, what goes into one. This is actually more than an estimate. This is a scope. Can you talk to us about that, how you put these together?
It's with cleaning these affected homes. It's pretty much the same scope in every home. And when you're cleaning, whether it be sewage, fire, smoke, you start from the top down. So we require, or the contents need to be removed from the home. And then once the contents are removed from the home, we start in the attic. The attic insulation is removed. Once that's removed, then we go up there, we clean it, we do the thermal fogging, HEPA vacuuming, and then the attic is done. And then you start with the rest of the cleaning. We use Easy Decon. It's a product that we use. We fog the entire home, and it neutralizes most, if not all, of the contaminants that are produced by the smoke and that are in your house. And then after that, you have to remove the larger particles. You do that by HEPA vacuuming, and then after the large particles are done, you clean. And then in the process of all of that, you're also using air scrubbers to help catch any larger particulate that is becoming airborne while you're vacuuming or cleaning. And then hydroxyl or ozone generators are used as well to sanitize and kind of clean the air and the odor. And then at the end of the project, you have it tested by an independent hygienist.
Okay. And then you've got a breakdown here, which looks pretty straightforward. And again, this is like your standard report.
Yeah, we have changed a few things on here and how we word things on the air clearance test. I don't put a price in there anymore. That's up to the independent hygienist, but we make a point of putting it in there so that when our scope of work does get approved by the insurance company.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. When our scope of work does get approved, it says in there it's an air quality clearance. We're having a hygienist come in there and complete the testing And that way they can't argue with the post testing because it's in there and we're saying it needs to be done. The reason we took the price out is really just to kind of keep it more independent and make sure there's no issues. We've had some homeowners that have hired their own hygienist, which is completely fine. We have ones that we recommend, but I honestly, as long as they have the qualifications, I don't care which hygienist comes in and checks our work. And then, you have your scope of work. This is just kind of the general line items that we have, things that are going to be charged for the HEPA filters, the duct lay flat, those kind of things. But as you're looking over the scope of work, when you get into it, it should be pretty much the same through every room. You should have, the thermal fogging, HEPA vacuuming, cleaning, removing carpet wherever that's found, and it should be very similar.
So, and I see that you have where you have the price for air quality clearance. It's about $2,000. And my understanding is that's about the price range for both pre and post testing clearance, but it's a ballpark, right? That's just a ballpark, right? So, what can make the cost of the air quality clearance go up?
Depends on what they're testing for. So the average, if they're just testing for the ash, soot, and char, that's about $2,000. If they're testing more in depth to see what the ash, soot, and char is for dioxins and all the other, carcinogens that are out there, that definitely increases the cost of the testing, upwards of $4,000 or more.
Okay. Sandy, just to jump back for a minute to the pre-testing costs, because I think we kind of skipped over that. Like, for some people who are still haven't actually had their houses cleaned, or still kind of dueling with what the scope is. You mentioned Dawn sharing something more like 15,000 for the comprehensive testing. Is that more like if you get into a battle with your insurance company and you're having to?
Yeah. And most of the work she does is litigation, where it's,
Right.
really important that the conditions be documented.
Yeah.
It's just like Rob said, there's a huge variation. There are some, they call them indoor air quality professionals, like that I've come in contact with here in San Francisco, that'll come and test a house for, $300, $400. They do a perfectly good job doing tape lift testings, microvac testings on, particles. But that's just going to give you, one scenario. And in most cases, you're going to be able to see that stuff before you start. So it's when you get into the really testing of things like the aldehydes, the benzenes, the formaldehydes and stuff, that you need specialized equipment, and it's just going to cost more. And so I think it's a personal threshold decision.
And how does a person, we have, Laura's testing was more like 5,000, and it included dioxins, furans, heavy metals. How does a person know what their house has to be tested for?
The only answer that I have for that is it's going to be your personal comfort level.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about this, Rob, but so, like I said, some people are concerned and some people really aren't. And you can pretty much know that the smoke's going to bring other things in with it, piggyback in, bring them in. So it's your personal comfort level, and it's going to be tough. These insurance companies, they don't want to test for the the gases and the different benzenes and stuff, and it's a tough call.
Yeah, I mean, so here's a question, Rob, that came in from Carol. If there are no safety guidelines established for toxins, furans, and metals, how do we know what to do with the IH test results we get post remediation? Oh, I can't tell if you're talking. You don't look muted, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. As far as the results from the post testing, I really rely on the hygienist to explain that information to the homeowners and kind of go through the report. The ones that I've seen, it breaks down the percentages of, the soot, char, and ash that they found.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any post tests that have tested for the carcinogens or the dioxins or anything like that. I've seen some of the pre-testing done, but I haven't seen any of the post-testing done. So I would just really, rely on that hygienist and ask them the questions. And, if depending on the levels and what's in there, have them explain to it why it's considered safe. I'm not
Mhm.
a chemist, so
Yep.
I can't really answer that. And that's why I
Yep.
kick it back to them.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So what are we looking at?
technically, the
Oh, sorry.
post-cleaning remediation should come back clear, so you shouldn't have much
Right.
after the cleaning. So that's the best world answer there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Rob, what are we looking at here?
This is just really just kind of the breakdown of what should happen in each room. You've got the fogging. It's kind of out of order, actually. The HEPA vacuuming should be above that, and then cleaning. Again, you start with the top and you work your way down. So cleaning, ceiling, walls, floors, light fixtures, doors, baseboards, and then at the same time you're running the hydroxyl or ozone. A lot. In fact, I haven't had one customer request an ozone treatment, but that's why we run hydroxyls throughout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sandy, you were sharing something about ozone being kind of disfavored a little bit.
Yeah, I think ozone's dangerous personally. You talk to some of these hygienists, they'll agree that the ozone, the documentation says, that it combines and it produces an inert, byproduct, but they've done testing in it and it really doesn't. If you're going to opt for one of those things, I think it's generally accepted that hydroxyl is much, much safer. You can be in the building. I think, it's kind of tough, to recommend something that you don't want to be in the building while it's going on. So,
Yep. Okay. So, we talked a little bit about the real life reality, that insurance companies will often buy expert services in bulk. So they will, make a deal with a ServPro franchise, for example, to say, okay, we have X number of losses from this event. We will retain you to do reports on all of those losses. And then they sort of agree on a price. And then that means that vendor has to do the work for whatever they negotiated, that they said that they would charge the insurers. And of course that, can create problems. You heard, us talk about this earlier, that sometimes it means, again, that the restoration company considers the insurance company to be their customer rather than you. And that's where you have to stand your ground, and it's your property, and the insurance company has obligations, all kinds of legal obligations to you. And so you have every right to insist that vendor does a thorough and good job. But one of the problems people have sometimes with, in addition to corners being cut on the work, it's also that they get a lump, they don't really, it's very hard to understand by looking at the paperwork that the homeowner is given, what exactly is this person doing? So whatever the estimate that you get from your adjuster to do the work, it should be detailed and quantified so that you can compare it apples to apples. So Sandy, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys are seeing these or not. We saw a lot of them here in the 2020 fires in California, where especially one insurer would show up with their vendor restoration representative with them, and they would sort of do a little test and say, okay, they had category 1, 2, and 3, so we kind of lost it on our slide, but and then each category had a lump sum cost per square foot charge to do the work. And there was of course a a caveat to that, that once they did it, once they, anybody who hired them, they showed up, you know, with a little gal with a bucket who wasn't, you know, certified or trained to do smoke remediation. So be careful, because if you get an estimate that's this vague, you know, like Rob's estimate was so good, it needs to be detailed like that. They need to outline everything they're going to touch and clean, because then if there's a bunch of soot left on a light fixture, the homeowner can say, hey guys, you know, look, you were paid to clean this light fixture and you didn't do it, or it didn't come clean or whatever. It's sort of an accountability. It's peace of mind for you because you know exactly what's going to be cleaned, and B, it's the same for the restoration company. And what we saw with these lump sum estimates was, you know, they wouldn't do a good job, and then the homeowner would complain and the insurer would say, well, you know, they agreed to clean the house, so you got to take it up with them. They did it wrong. And that's definitely not the case. It's also important to remember that, you know, cleaning light smoke off a surface requires, I mean, aside from like heavy smoke, like if you have a smoke loss where something burns inside your house, that's a different story. But on these wildfire claims or these types of claims, it's really the same amount of work to HEPA vac the walls and ceilings. HEPA vacuuming them for different amounts of smoke is still the same amount of work. So that's important too. And I'm sure Rob knows that because they do that.
And so this is, Sandy, this is an example. This looks just like Rob's, right? This is a detailed, this is what you want. Okay.
This is what you want. You want everything detailed. And this was a really, really small, really small claim. And it just sort of talks about how the difference in,
there was $1,000 difference in the estimate from the adjuster versus the whoever the estimate that the adjuster put together versus one that was more detailed. It's just an illustration that very often lump sum is going to be
inadequate.
Is going to be lower, right? Okay, so cleaning, the smoke remediation protocol. Rob, now we are solidly in your sweet spot. So you want to walk us through this slide and in terms of, like, you know, how the protocol, or I can do it. It's up to you.
I haven't seen it before, so, but I'll try and work through it. This is obviously more for, you know, a house that was next to an area that was burned. You want to remove any contamination, or not contamination, but any burned material. You get that, remove the source, remove that, and then you know, take it step by step. Inside the home, you're going to remove all the soft goods. The soft goods need to be packed out. I think I mentioned it earlier. I'll mention it again because it's really important. The homes that I have seen, that I have heard, that we're working with, that have failed their post-testing, the contents are still left inside. The soft goods are left inside. The things are not being removed properly. And then you just, again, go step by step. And as long as you're going step by step, at the end of it, you should never have a problem with the post-testing and clearing everything. Starting with the attic, working your top all the way down. Insulation needs to be removed. Attic needs to be cleaned, needs to be HEPA vac. And then at the same time, and once you get done with the attic and you start the interior, the HVAC system should be cleaned. We've done it a couple different ways. Depending on the HVAC scheduling, if they come in the day before we start cleaning, we make sure the system is shut off. As soon as they start cleaning it, it does not get turned back on until we are done cleaning. Ideally, though, we would like that the HVAC system cleaned in conjunction with our cleaning, or right there kind of towards the end with it not running. Running the HEPA filters and the air scrubbers to catch those airborne particulates that might be you know, freed as you're running the HEPA vacuum, or you know, wiping down the walls with your cloth. The dry removal, that's when we do the cleaning, we do a dry cleaning. If necessary, we'll just use a little bit of water after we use the easy decon. And then again, at the same time, once you start the cleaning, we start the hydroxyls and the air scrubbers. And then in the beginning, we weren't doing a lot of sealing on any of the interiors of the home because of the testings that have been done that are showing the dioxins and stuff like that. Homeowners are requesting more of that. So we're putting in for it. I haven't had any actually approved for the sealing yet. But if they have that testing up front, I think it's definitely justified.
Okay. And so we did get a question about Easy Decon that you indicated you'd answer live. This person is asking, anonymous attendee is asking, we don't see that the manufacturer claims neutralization of smoke residue. They appear to only claim elimination of mold and bacteria hazards. So what's our answer there? Rob, did we lose you volume wise again?
Sorry, I think I keep hitting my mute button just so I
Okay.
don't. I have a little tickle in my throat.
All right.
So I've had a lot of conversations with the people over at Easy Decon. They're based out of Broomfield. It's produced by IntelliGuard. So I can't really answer that question, but what I would like to do, I think maybe on the 25th, if I'm welcomed back, I think I'd like to bring one of their representatives on because I think it's a phenomenal product. And based on the information that I've got from them, I think they would be able to answer that a lot better.
Okay.
What I've been told, and as far as the bacteria and hazards, and that this product is used in to neutralize basically anthrax, or it can neutralize those bad contaminations. Anthrax, from my conversations with the people over at Easy Decon, is one of the hardest things in the world to actually neutralize, and this product can do it in 30 minutes. So I can't answer the question directly, but I would really like to get somebody on here to talk about that as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I know, so we have there after both textiles and soft goods and also electronics specialists. So either of you or both of you, why do people need a specialist to clean soft goods and electronics?
Thank you.
Rob, you want to start?
I pause. Because you want an expert in the field with what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
We're experts in cleaning structures and that kind of stuff. We're not experts in cleaning contents. I have the basic understanding and we have the basic knowledge of it, but you want that company that's what they do, and they can clean it. They can say why they can clean it, why they can't clean it, and you want those people in your corner to address those things.
Yeah. And now Susan Tan is asking, she says, our neighbor's house needs to be demolished. Should we be waiting until the demolishing and debris removal is done before we start our remediation?
I would, if you can. I mean, depending on what the time frame is, the chance of things drifting over, is pretty high.
Yeah. Rob, do you concur?
I agree with that. I've talked to several homeowners that they're kind of stuck in the middle and they don't want to wait. So we recommend, if whichever house it is, really sealing up that side of the house. I mean, it can come in from anywhere depending on where the wind's blowing, but really sealing up that side of the house using plastic to make sure that the windows are airtight, putting new silicone, putting new weather stripping in the windows, covering the vents, making sure that you're doing everything you can to avoid recontamination. But I do agree, if you can wait, then that's the best thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to make sure, I mean, I want to do, we are going to, we do have limited time, but I do want to make sure we hit this issue that's coming up a lot with soft goods. So actually, before we get to having you explain that next picture, and this came up like in the last session, I understand that, the toys, my kids' stuffies, it's hard to let them go, but if can they be clean, can they not be clean? And the same question is to clothing. So Rob, what is your guidance to your customers in terms of clothing, sheets, bedding, furniture, and rugs?
So when it comes to the soft goods, as far as our knowledge and our training, if it's contaminated, we recommend that it be replaced. Kids clothing, stuff like that, we recommend that it be replaced. We can't guarantee that it's completely clean. So that's where it's important to have that content company that specializes in that stuff and can stand behind, yes, we can clean it, no, we can't. But typically when it comes to soft goods that are in an affected area, whether even on a sewage loss, usually in the insurance company's eyes, it's cheaper to just replace it than it is to try and clean it. Because if you do try and clean it and you spend those hours of trying to clean it and it does get tested and failed, then you got to replace it anyway.
Right. But then just like insurers have contracts, the contracts with the big national, franchise type operations, they often will get paid, by the quantity of soft goods that they clean and bring back. And we're hearing, we always hear, people's concerns, both that like, why did they waste my policy dollars cleaning things that obviously can't be cleaned? They came back and they still smell. What we're hearing also from the Marshall area is that people are finding that their stuff got taken out to be cleaned and then it got mixed up with somebody else's stuff, and they feel like it's not being properly tended to, properly cared for, and or segregated from other people's possessions. But you were saying, Rob, that it's in your view, like people wanting to hold on to their soft goods is going to delay, just because they're afraid, to let somebody take them out, is going to delay effective cleaning. Is that a fair observation?
Yeah. Just touching on what's going on out here with the homeowners and with the content companies, there's not too many content companies in Colorado that really specialize in cleaning. And so when the fires happened, they were really overwhelmed. They had too much work. They didn't have enough people. They were trying to do everything that they could. The communication, I think, with a lot of the homeowners was not where it is. I mean, we've worked with several of the content companies and we've never had any problems, and they've done a great job on the projects that we've brought them in on. So I think there's a lot of contributing factors that have degraded their work, maybe, or just not given the attention to detail that needs to be given in these. So I've reached out. There's a couple companies out here that are doing a pretty good job, that have some pretty good reviews. So I'm hoping that we can change that a little bit and get some good feedback on a company that's doing it right. But at the end of it, it should be a content company that specializes in that. And if they're getting stuff back that's not clean, it definitely needs to be addressed with the company, and it should be handled correctly, and they should step up and stand behind their work. I mean, we stand behind our work. If we fail a post testing, we're going to come back in and clean it for free.
Right. So maybe, I don't know, if, Sandy, this might be more for you. Ellen asks, we have clothes that were laundered and dry cleaned without perfume. Some of them register hazardous formaldehyde readings on a handheld meter when misted with water. How would one have this professionally tested?
Most of the IHs that'll test your structures will also test your soft goods. Okay. And that's another thing. If you suspect that your soft goods weren't properly cleaned, they use different procedures than regular. We tell people, don't send them to the laundromat. Don't just send them to your local dry cleaner, no matter how much you love them. First off, you're exposing those people to a lot of smoke particulates that they might not really realize. And then there are different methods. So if you're suspecting that it's not clean, or you're concerned and you want to make sure, I would recommend having the items tested. They can take microvac samples. They can use a little vacuum and they suck up things. Make sure it's independent. I think I was hearing Laura tell a story earlier about her stuff getting tested by the company who did the testing. That's, you know, the fox in the hen house. So
Right.
always have an independent company test the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rob said that straight up, that you don't test your own work.
Right.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, what are we looking at here, Rob?
So this is just the easy decon in use. A thermal fogging, fog the entire room, entire area, attic as well. Dwell time is about 15 to 20 minutes. So then once it settles and everything is it's not airborne anymore, then you can go back in and you can start your cleaning.
Okay. All right. And then just a few slides about, you know, safety precautions. I think everyone is probably aware at this point of the importance of wearing PPE. And Sandy, you want to just sort of narrate these?
Yeah, these are just some examples of equipment you might see people. These are the backpack HEPA vacs, dry removals, the first removal and smoke. The second ones, this is just a standard. They're HEPA filters. They're called, we call them air scrubbers. They are very good. They can be used with or without negative pressure. Rob mentioned that earlier. The very best way to do it is to create negative pressure in a room, which you put up containment barriers, you close off, you know, everything, and you have the exhaust ducted out of the room. But if you see these in a room running without containment, it's not a huge, the negative pressure causes the particles to go into the machine better. Some people freak out if they see them where they're just ducted into the same room. Don't worry about that. The air is clean. This is an ozone generator. I already don't like those. They'll kill your pets and your plants if they're left in the house. This is a hydroxyl generator. It's basically a chemical reaction in the air. It does hit the VOCs. And then this is just a slide, you guys can look at it later, that talks about the different methods of hydroxyl and ozone.
Okay, so for post-cleaning testing, we don't have illustrations. We just have these 5 questions for the 2 of you. So what does post-remediation testing entail? Rob, you want to start?
I could try.
Really, if you don't know, that's okay.
I really don't know. I call the independent hygienist and ask them to come in and check our work.
Yeah, Sandy, do you want to, are you going to get the same kind of detailed report that you'd get from pre-testing?
Absolutely. Okay. You know, it's really, if you have a pre-test, then they maybe don't need to do all the background stuff, but the post-remediation testing really should cover the same thing. And basically what you're looking for is your house clean? One of the things I'd like to say is follow these people around while they're doing it, if you're able to at all. And if you see areas of, dust or soot or whatever, point them in that direction, because they should be testing the areas of most damage. And post remediation, there shouldn't be any visible damage. If there is, I would recommend, talking to the restoration contractor before the testing happens. But that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that your house is clear and safe to reoccupy. So.
Yeah. And now as to the question of should the insurer pay for the testing, I'll answer that yes. And, it really does depend who you talk to, because I talked to a public adjuster in the area who's very experienced. He's like, oh yeah, the insurers are paying for the testing. And, then I'm hearing from some people who are just sort of going in on their own that they are having trouble getting their insurer to authorize or pay. But Rob, it's been your experience that insurers will pretty much uniformly cover the cost of post remediation testing?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any issues with the post testing being paid for by the insurance.
Okay. And then what happens if well, how, I don't want to skip that question. How can, Sandy, how can the homeowner know the testing was thorough? Is there, you know, that's a tough one.
It's a tough question. You know, that's, I get called in all the time to, you know, to read the hygienist reports and say, you know, some of it's common sense. If you take the time to sort of drill down, for example, you know, one of the cases that I'm on, the insurer's hygienist cleared the house, no further cleaning recommended, nothing was wrong. The HVAC was fine, the attic was fine. Well, you could look, when I looked in the attic, it was just filled with soot, the HVAC. And when you look, they didn't actually test the HVAC. They didn't go and take a sample from the unit. They took a sample from the master bedroom cold air return, which is, you know, on the far side of the house that really wasn't exposed. So some common sense things like that, make sure that you drill down. Don't just like read the conclusions. Try to, it's a little tricky, but go and say, okay, they're saying that the HVAC is okay. Let's go down into the data and see if you can see, you know, that. It's hard, but you know.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, is it a fair statement that the ideal is that the homeowner have some hand in figuring out who's going to do the post cleaning testing?
I would, yeah, they can. I mean, if they have an opinion about that, then that's good. You know, yeah. You have to take some of my answers with a grain of salt, because I only see things really that go bad, right? Nobody calls me and said, I'd like you to look at this claim. It went great. Yeah. You know, so the things I see are always, you know, the hygienists hired by the insurance companies in the cases that I deal with are generally biased toward the insurer. So, you know, I'm sure that there's some that aren't. Right.
And that's an important caveat for the audience to know. I mean, we're an insurance consumer advocacy group, and so we deal with the information that comes our way from consumers, you know, but we do try to give you the best guidance that we can. So Rob, what happens if the cleaning fails the test?
It's got to be recleaned. I mean, it really just kind of boils down to that. You know, I've seen some that have failed by other companies. The hygienist recommends, you know, a specific room or a specific area. So it kind of would depend on what the hygienist recommend. But if it fails, it has to be redone. It needs to be cleaned until it doesn't fail.
Yeah. Okay, so just a deep breath. We're heading into the home stretch, and I just am so grateful to both of you for all the good information, and those of you who are asking questions are great questions. And I'm going to stop talking so we can all take a moment.
We have one in here about a contractor who damages your home while doing the cleanup.
We'll hit that when we get to dispute resolution.
Oh, got it. Good.
I think we're almost at. Okay. Resolving disputes. So we do have a question about how do you deal with a contractor who damages your home while doing cleanup, who's a preferred insurance vendor. So, you know, we do, I mean, we're a consumer advocacy organization. So in our view, if an insurance company has brought a vendor in, they should be responsible for warranting that vendor's work. They should be responsible for it. They should take care of that problem. That doesn't always happen. And we hear this a lot, where the people say, well, my insurance company said it was an arm's length relationship and I signed the contract, you signed the contract, therefore, you know, your remedy is with them and you've got to deal with it. But I think generally our feeling is, you know, this is like anything else when you're dealing with an insurance company. You know, you want to be the squeaky wheel that, you know, that makes it clear that you are not going away, that you are, that you're informed, that you know your rights, that you know how to put things in writing and be clear, and that you expect them to make it right since they brought that vendor into your house. And that is where, you know, filing a complaint with the Department of Insurance is always going to be your second step. Your first step is self-help, right? Make your request in writing. If the if they were refusing to pay for testing and it's warranted, you explain why. If the remediation was insufficient, you're going to document that. In writing, you're going to go up the chain of command with the insurance company. You go above your adjuster's head. If that doesn't work and you can't get to a manager, you file a complaint with the Division of Insurance. And if that doesn't work, then you can get professional help. But the whole way through, you're backing up your request with documentation, short, to the point, and very specific, to show why you're entitled to what it is that you're asking for and what went wrong and why it's not your fault and why the insurance company should make it right. When we say get professional help when you hit a wall, we're talking about either a public adjuster or a lawyer. And knowing your rights is important for self-help, right? Your rights are what govern how your insurance company is supposed to handle your claim. And that includes people that they bring in, people that they refer to you. You have a right to have confidence that a professional that your insurance company introduces you to is reliable. So when you're writing and you make that clear that you wouldn't have hired this person but for your insurance company recommending them. So what are the sources of your leverage to get what it is that you need? The laws and regulations that are applicable to insurance companies and claims. Our website is a treasure trove of information about that. That's where you go to the Marshall Help Library and you will find the bulletins, the regulations, and the laws. The case law that courts have published. We have, if you get into a jam with your insurer, we have a clinic coming up in June that you can register for if you have really done everything you can and you've tried on your own being politely assertive, it hasn't worked. And you can register for, and you've tried the Department of Insurance, they haven't been able to give you the individual professional help that you need. Then you can try using one of our clinics. You can try conferring with a policyholder lawyer. But again, logic and common sense still holds the day here, right? Your insurance company has an obligation of good faith and fair dealing to you. And that means they're supposed to behave reasonably, not put their financial interests ahead of yours. And those are that's some of what you would read in these cases, is that the insurer has this obligation to handle your claim in good faith. And when they don't, you have remedies. So this is a bulletin that's available to you that you can reference in your letters, in your self-help remedy journey. The division directs insurers to not take the smoke lightly, but to consider the long-lasting effects on electronics, furniture, and other properties, and consider your health. So not only is it in the law, but it's also in this bulletin, very explicit. Okay. And then these are the regulations in Colorado that talk about how they're supposed to behave and what's an unfair claim practice. You have the right to select the repair professionals of your choosing. These are some of the issues that people bring to us all the time, that insurers say this was pre-existing, your carpets were off-gassing before the fire, downplaying the health impacts, saying we're not going to pay to match the carpeting, pushing captive experts, etc. And this is the information for filing complaint or seeking assistance with the Division of Insurance. We have on our website a directory where you can find professionals that support us, that are part of our family and what we bring to you as a nonprofit. We have licensed public adjusters, we have policyholder attorneys. Those are people who day in and day out read insurance policies, know the law, know how to go to battle for you if you need them. Most of them will work on contingency, not all. That means that you don't pay them by the hour. you give them a cut of what they collect for you. We are not pro litigation. We are not anti litigation. We are pro policyholder. We are pro consumer. We want you to get to the point where you need to get with the least amount of stress, the least amount of money, the least amount of time. So when we talk about, rattling your sword on your own, that's of course the cheapest way, using the government resources, that's the cheapest way, but paying a professional in this context often is money well spent. It's often, for a lot of people, it's just too much to deal with this. And as we said in the beginning of this program, and when we did the reality check, these expenses are expenses, expenses to double check, to do the testing, to do the proper scope, to have somebody like Rob be thorough, that costs money. And if your insurer is balking, that's one of the things we're here for, to help, fortify you so that you can, if you need to fight, you can fight. We certainly hope that you won't have to, but we know a lot of you already are in that situation. We know that. And that's why we're doing this series. So coming up, we have the Survivor Forum on the 24th, as I mentioned earlier. That's just for the community of partial loss standing home folks. Then we will have the Q&A on the 25th. I think I heard Rob say he's up for coming back for that, which would be awesome. And connecting us with the EasyCon folks. We do have that clinic in June. Hopefully you won't need that. We are cultivating lawyer experts in Colorado that will be as conversant, as knowledgeable about smoke issues as our California lawyers are, but we will have a California lawyer on that panel who has gone to the mat on cleaning issues for people in your situation. So we've got, I think, I guess we answered all the questions in the Q&A. And that's a beautiful thing, because obviously we are here to give you the answers that you're looking for. So I want to thank again Laura Collins, who's behind the scenes, but incredibly important. Rob Akins with Regal Restoration. Rob, you're a champ. Thank you so much. Sandy Watts, thank you so much for sharing, the breadth of your expertise. Annie Barber, who's one of our liaisons to your community, who lost a home in a fire and is now full-time with us, helping other folks. A number of her neighbors are partial folks like you. And we are keeping on with you through this process. Reminder, if you know people who are maybe you see them on Facebook, but you don't see them, you don't see them in a forum like this, or you think they may not know about it, encourage them to sign up. All of our stuff is free of charge. And again, I want to thank the Community Foundation for being quite hands-on in this situation and doing everything they can to deliver their donor dollars to where it's going to make the most impact to help all of you. So I think that concludes the evening. And again, Rob and Sandy, thank you so much. I hope you all have a safe evening. The recording of today's webinar will be up on our website. Let's see when, tomorrow. And you can pre-submit questions for the 25th if you think of them after tonight. And we will just go straight to questions on that evening, and there won't be any educational content. But if there are issues that you feel like we didn't cover, we're here to hear about those, and we're here to curate more educational content for you in the weeks, months ahead. Thank you all for your time, and thank you to my team for all the work that went into putting together the program tonight. Good evening.